An author who we all know, who is a creator or originator of any written work, such as a book or play, and is also considered a writer or a poet. While in this case, or on today's show, Chris Westfall is one of the most sought after coaches and keynote speakers in the world, and he has helped launch over 6 of businesses and has appeared on ABC News, NBC TV, and CNN as well. You know, he's a regular contributor to Forbes, and he has worked with thousands of leaders at Fortune 500 companies, non-profit organizations, and high-tech startups. He regularly consults with top-tier universities and is the author of 4 books: Easier Leadership Language, The New Elevator Pitch, and Bulletproof Branding. Take a look.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. Well, my work really focuses on helping people to find some healing in some difficult times. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty in the world around us. No matter where you're listening to the sound of my voice, you know that things can be kind of difficult from time to time. And my work concentrates on helping to make things easier. So in my career, and I worked in the corporate world for about 15 years, and I've been an entrepreneur here for over a decade, owning several businesses and focusing on speaking, coaching, and writing as the main emphasis of my business. And I've really found that what people are looking for today is a way to make things easier, even when life isn't easy. And that's the title of my new book. It's called Easier. And it really, I think, taps into a pathway out of frustration, not with a lot of simple answers or 10 things that you need to do to add to your list of things to do, but a way of looking at life, a way of approaching life that I think turns us back towards a more natural state, turns us back towards nature, and even towards our human nature. Because when we see ourselves as a part of nature, we see that things can get easier. We see that we don't have to go it alone, and we even see, and I know this probably sounds crazy, but I'm going to say it anyway. We see that the universe has our back, that the universe is working to support us. And even when there have been times in my life where I felt like the universe stabbed me in the back, I've come to realize that's just not the case. There's a new way of looking at things. I have a good friend of mine, Richard is his name, and he's from Nigeria. And we were talking about this very question. And I told him, I said, Richard, I believe that everyone has a story to tell. And so my work focuses on helping people to bring their stories forward, to bring their stories to life. But in that same spirit, I want to share my story and share my experiences, not from a standpoint of, writing a memoir or, turning my life into some story, but to take my experience and to help others to see a way forward. And my friend Richard and I, we're both dedicated to helping people to understand that they don't have to go it alone. That life, if it looks like you have to face the world by yourself, you have to lift the world on your own shoulders, there's another way. And that way forward is not just based on self-reliance, but an understanding of the power of connection and the power inside of, again, our humanity. And so that's why I coach, that's why I write, that's why I speak, is to try to create those connections so that people can bring their stories to life and live their authentic stories in a way that makes life more fulfilling and, quite frankly, easier. That's so true. And I started coaching and I had no idea what I was doing. I'll be the first to admit it. I had people that that reached out to me and they said, Chris, we need your help. And they were asking me for my help and for my service. And I didn't even know what I could do or what that even looked like, but service was the key. And so for me, coaching is about service. And so when I stepped towards service, and I would enter into these conversations and people would ask for my help, and I would ask myself two questions. One is, do I think I can help this person? The second one was, do I want to? And if the answer to both of those questions was yes, I stepped forward and decided to create something together in a spirit of collaboration. And what we created together for my various clients, and particularly the clients that wanted to speak to investors. These were entrepreneurs that wanted to know how to craft an effective pitch to investors so that they could get investment in their ideas. And we stepped into a collaboration, a sort of co-creation that is at the centerpiece of my coaching work. So everything that I do is bespoke. It's tailored for the clients that I serve, and I work with entertainers and media personalities. I work with entrepreneurs. I work with political figures. I work with executive leaders who work at global corporations, and I work with college students. So I don't really have a niche per se, other than that my niche is the human condition and how to help people to see things in a new way. And that's what coaching can create. And coaching is different than therapy, because therapy sort of looks back. Therapy follows the trail of tears, if you will, of the things in our life that happened in the past that we're trying to cope with. Coaching looks forward. Coaching follows the trail of dreams, if you will, to help people to create something new for themselves, or to find that thing that's been missing in their lives. And that's what my coaching does for others. But I'll tell you what, that's what coaching has done for me, because I've had some powerful coaches in my life that have made a real difference for me, to help me to create new things, including the various books that I've written. Well, Easier is unlike anything that I've ever written before, and it's the most authentic book that I've ever written. And that the thing about Easier that is special is that it's a conversation. So it's a conversation between a client and a coach, and the reader can observe what happens and what occurs in the midst of some very difficult circumstances. Because when you write a book called Easier, you need to have some difficulty for folks to overcome. And the book is a business fable. So so what that means is there's an aspect of fiction in the book, and yet it's the most authentic thing that I've ever written, because I found that in this creative business fable, I was able to bring more stories to life and to speak with an authentic voice in a way that I think is really powerful. And every reader who looks at this book has a different journey. The new elevator pitch is kind of instructional, and it's observational, and it shows you how to pitch your business ideas, which is a vital concept. Easier is more of the concept of how to approach life and how to approach the difficulties that show up. But in the book, it doesn't have a tidy little, sort of Hollywood ending, because life doesn't have Hollywood endings. Life is messy. But in the midst of the mess, there is a way to see things from a new viewpoint, to change our perspective, and to step into possibilities. And one of the things in the book that I talk about is how possibilities always exist. When life is difficult, we don't see those possibilities. We see the world narrowing in, and we see only one way forward. But when you think about it, I mean, in this conversation right now, how many possibilities exist? Well, we could talk about anything. The possibilities are literally endless. And it's easy for us to see that because we're calm and we're enjoying a conversation with each other. But what about when life gets difficult? Isn't it true that endless possibilities still exist? Isn't it true that hope still exists? But we don't think so. We say, oh, all hope is lost. It's never lost. We just don't know where to find it, or we're not willing to look for it. So well, depression is certainly something that a lot of folks struggle with, and there's no shame and no blame in that. And from a standpoint of how to make life easier when things are hard, a couple of things that I can share. First of all, you don't have to go it alone. And if you're feeling depressed and down, and I know I've had times in my life where I've felt depressed and down, and my business has been in the tank, and it's been really, really tough. But what has helped me to see things in a new way is to understand that I'm not in this alone. To reach out, to find the connections, to connect to resources like this interview that can help you to see things in a new way. Because the first step towards moving towards new possibility is always a shift in perspective, a perspective that can help you to see new possibilities. And what is that perspective? You know, I had to go through this myself, and I write about it in the book. When I lost my father, he wasn't just my dad, he was my friend. And I lost my dad to COVID. I lost my dad to COVID-19. And I'm sure there are people listening to this conversation that have lost people due to the pandemic or to other illnesses. And losing a loved one is always difficult. And I was very, very depressed. And I kept asking myself, how am I going to get through this, right? How am I going to cope? And I would find myself weeping, just crying at traffic lights, remembering my father, and the loss would send me into just spirals of grief. And I said, you know, how am I going to get through this? I've got to stop this grief. And instead I stopped, and I realized that I didn't want to stop the grief. And that may sound crazy, but let me tell you what I mean, because if I were going to stop the way that I was feeling, I would have to stop the love that I had for my father. I would have to somehow stop the memories and honoring his memory. My tears honored his life. And when I made it okay to feel what I was feeling in the midst of my grief, I began to see things in a new way. And I began to shift from how can I get through this to what can I get from this. In the midst of a bad situation, I ask, what can I get from this? And my latest book, Easier, is dedicated to my father's memory. In fact, the book came from this very sad circumstance, this place of depression, of loss. But it became a gain, not just for me, but for everyone who reads this story, because they can see, hopefully, in my experience, a way out of their own, a way to shift into what can I get from this. It's not always easy to see in the midst of difficult circumstances, but if you can somehow find a way to ask this question, it can make a real difference. It made a difference for me. Here's a question. What's good? What's good about this? Can you see the good? Because there is good, even in the midst of sadness, even in the midst of loss. And when we make that transition, we gain some agency. And what I mean by agency is the ability to move forward in our lives, to step forward with our grief, not to try to put it in a box and forget about it, but to step forward, embracing our humanity, embracing all of our feelings, embracing life in a way that says, isn't it amazing to be alive and to feel these tears and to feel joy and to feel love so deeply that we experience this kind of grief? What can you do to make it okay to be human? And from that place, can you see new options? Can you see new possibilities? I believe so. And inside of Easier, what happens to one of the characters in the story is that he loses his job. And so that's loss of a different kind. And from that loss, he spirals into the belief that his wife is going to leave him, that he won't be able to afford school for his children. Maybe people can relate to this. And I know that I can. I know that I've been there. I've had the experience of multiple losses across the course of my career. But here's what I know, and here's what I know about everyone listening to the sound of my voice. Even though I don't know them personally, I know the human condition, and I know that we are all resilient. We all have the ability to bounce back. It's not some 6-step process that we have to access. It's part of our DNA. It's part of how we are built as human beings. We are built to adapt. We are built to overcome. We are built to find our way out of difficult circumstances and to figure things out. So, it's easy to see the perfection in a flock of birds overhead. It's easy to see the perfection in the way that the waves hit the shore. It's easy to see the perfection in the trees that are growing all around us, but we don't see the perfection inside of our own design. And that's not to say that people are perfect or that we make perfect choices. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that we are built to heal. We are built to be resourceful. We are built to be resilient. It's part of our DNA. And if it doesn't look like resilience is available to you, if it doesn't look like resources are available to you, stop. Look again. Look again, because when we get lost in thought, we lose sight of the design that is built into the system. That's not to say that we make perfect choices or perfect decisions all the time. Lord knows I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, but here I am. I'm still standing, and so are you. And from that place of understanding, can we slow down just long enough to see new possibilities and step towards those possibilities and take action? That's what makes things easier. Well, one of the things that I'm thinking about, and I'd be curious to get your take on this, I'm thinking about reissuing the new elevator pitch and doing a version 2.0 and updating it. I wrote the new elevator pitch. The book's 10 years old, and I think it still stands up, but a lot has changed in 10 years. So that's what I'm thinking about. I'd be curious. Do you think I should reissue the new elevator pitch? What are your thoughts?